Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, February 28, 2025. The FAIRtax will help balance the federal budget. One of the things that President Trump recognizes is that you not only have to accomplish things, but you must also make sure that people understand that these things are good for them. For example, every day there are new revelations from the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, about government waste by federal agencies. Now, while most all Americans are delighted to see that their taxpayer money is not going to be wasted, there's a feeling of confusion because people can't see how cutting that waste directly benefits them. Now, the obvious place where people should see the reduction in waste is the federal budget. Now, if $1 trillion of waste is cut from the U.S. budget, then that's $1 trillion less in taxes we should have to pay. Make sense? Well, unfortunately, that seemingly simple example is rendered a good bit more complicated by the fact that the present income payroll tax system is cleverly designed to hide the true amount of federal tax that Americans pay. Now, we're often told that if you want to know how much you're paying in federal taxes, just look on your pay stub and see how much is being taken out. Better yet, just check your 1040 form. The number you're looking for is right there. Of course, that's simply another Washington trick, and it's not true. The D.C. elites don't want you thinking about all the tax costs that are being passed on to you and the prices of everything you buy. They've designed the system so that you're paying thousands of dollars more in taxes than your 1040 form shows, and you don't even realize it. Now, even the elites will agree that a business has to make a profit in order to stay in business. That means the prices they charge for their products and services have to be high enough to cover all their costs, plus a little bit for profit. Now, what the elites don't want you to notice is that those costs include 7.65% Social Security tax on the wages of every employee, the business federal income tax on their earnings, federal excise taxes on utilities, air travel, and fuel, and the accounting costs to collect and account for the payroll and income taxes. Now, let's say you have a product that would sell for $95 if none of the above-mentioned taxes existed. Now, there will be variations across different products, but in this example, let's say the business has to charge an additional $5 to cover those tax costs. This brings the price up to $100, but that's not going to be enough. Remember, the company has to make a profit in order to stay in business and provide an income to its owners. So if the company wants to make a 10% profit, it will sell the product for $110. 50 cents of that extra $10 will be because of the tax-related costs. And another thing you're not supposed to think about is the fact that the products we see on store shelves go through a long production chain, like lumber that is cut and goes to the mill, and then the wood is sold to the pencil company. The pencil manufacturer then sells to a wholesaler who sells to retailers who sell to you. Now, tax costs force markups all the way through the production chain. And by the time a product gets to you, those markups make up a significant portion of the price you pay, and you never see them. You have no idea that they're even there. Your receipt does not show you how much of what you paid for an item goes to cover all the taxes imposed along the entire length of the production chain. Now, how the FAIRtax is different. The FAIRtax is a federal retail sales tax charged on purchases of new retail goods and payment for retail services, like haircuts. Now, the tax rate is adjusted to raise the amount of money needed to keep the federal government running. Now, the math is easy. You don't need a quantum computer to figure it out. You can easily do it on your mobile phone's calculator. Now, if the FAIRtax rate is set to raise $5 trillion and there's $1 trillion savings from cutting government waste, then the FAIRtax rate can be reduced by 20%. If the federal budget is cut $2 trillion, then the rate can be reduced by 40%. And those kinds of reductions will be immediately seen by every American who buys things. And when people see that cutting government waste results in lower prices at the cash register, then there'll be a demand to cut more waste so the FAIRtax rate can be reduced even further. In conclusion, now many people are confused as to how anyone could possibly be against reducing government waste, But in an effort to preserve the status quo, numerous lawsuits have been filed challenging DOGE's authority and trying to deny them access to government records. We've seen some federal judges who seem to be in league with the people wanting to stop the cost cutting and preserve the current level of waste and inefficiency. Now, one of the major problems in having a bloated federal bureaucracy is that the people running that bureaucracy tend to look out for their own best interests and not the best interests of the American people. They're focused primarily on raising their own pay and benefits and protecting their own jobs. It's been that way for decades, and they're going to do everything in their power to keep it that way. As DOGE is finding, many of the jobs done by the federal bureaucracy can be replaced by using technology that everyone in private business has been using for years. Now, not only will this reduce the number of federal workers needed, it will also result in much better service to the American people. In President Trump, we finally have a president who sees that cutting government waste is important. He also sees that the corrupt and incomprehensible income payroll tax system has to be eliminated if America is once again going to be free and prosperous. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and returns freedom to the American people. It's imperative, though, that we not replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elite. We must let Congress and the President know the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the fair tax. Now, make no mistake about it. The fair tax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It'll strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the fair tax will be fierce and unrelenting. And don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well, so no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts of all of us. We need your financial assistance and we need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information to President Trump about the fair tax, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.